we're going to talk about something a lot less emotional, and that is Donald Trump coming for Lisa Cook, who is currently the governor of the Federal Reserve. I say currently, I don't know if she is or not technically. Trump said he fired her, but she's contending that he doesn't have the authority to do so, which I'm sure that she's right, because the Federal Reserve is an independent, non-political part of the government. I don't think Donald Trump has executive power to do anything with the Federal Reserve, but regardless, he doesn't like her for the simple fact that she's not playing ball. He doesn't like her for the same reason that he's not too hot on Jerome Powell right now, and that is they will not be fleshlights for Donald Trump. They will not do whatever he says because, well, they have principles, and also because if the Federal Reserve operates at the behest of Donald Trump, we will go into a depression yesterday. I will explain a little bit more on that as to why it is so dangerous for Donald Trump to effectively take political control of the Federal Reserve, but let's hear some more reporting on this situation.
A move, President Trump announced he is firing Fed Governor Lisa Cook over allegations of mortgage fraud. This is the first time a president has fired a Fed governor in the central bank's 111-year history. Cook has not been charged with any crime. This has huge implications in politics, law, and the economy. CNN's Matt Egan here to explain it all. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning, John. Look, we are living through this historic clash between a norm-shattering president and a central bank that fiercely protects its independence. And all sides agree that there's so much at stake here when it comes to the economy, the cost of living, and the future of the Fed itself. So the latest drama is the fact that the president announced last night that he has fired Lisa Cook, who is a Biden-nominated governor at the Fed. She's the first black woman on the Fed board. Now, Trump officials say this is about mortgage fraud, alleged mortgage fraud. But Democrats, economists, and former Fed officials that I'm in touch with, they fear that this is an attack on the institution of the Fed itself. And this is something that may ultimately get settled by the courts. Now, in this Truth Social post last night, the president said about Cook, he says he does not have confidence in her integrity due to, quote, deceitful and potentially criminal conduct. And he said the conduct at issue exhibits the sort of gross negligence in financial transactions that calls into question your competence and trustworthiness as a financial regulator. Now, a CNN review of mortgage documents does show that before Cook was nominated, that she did take out mortgages for two properties that were both listed as her primary residence. But we don't know whether or not this was something that was done intentionally. We don't know why this happened. And we also know that Cook has not been charged here. Now, Cook is striking a very defiant stance. She put out a statement through her lawyer where she said President Trump purported to fire me for cause when no cause exists under the law. He has no authority to do so, and I will not resign. And her lawyer went on to strongly hint at legal action here. Now, former Fed officials, like I said, are worried that this is an attack on the Fed. And they say that the Fed is supposed to be independent.
Yeah, they're right. Donald Trump is doing what every aspiring dictator has done before him. He is trying to consolidate power. He is trying to have his party in control of as many branches of government as possible. He's also, of course, targeting our First Amendment rights, whether that be freedom of speech, freedom of protest, locking people up for criticizing Israel. He's attacking the media, suing multiple media networks, arguing that some of them deserve to have their broadcast licenses revoked. He stripped funding from public broadcasting stations. This is like the fascist playbook. This is fascism 101. And yet for some reason, the fucking media, the very media network that is supposed to be the staunchest Trump hater, will not have anyone on that just fucking says that.
From politics for a good reason, right? Because if presidents called the shots on interest rates, of course they would want low mortgage rates and low credit card rates. But sometimes, as you know, John, you need higher rates to fight inflation. And history shows that when politicians meddle with central banks, it can end badly. Most recently with Turkey's Erdogan. He installed a loyalist to lead that central bank. They had runaway inflation shortly thereafter. So again,
the inflation in Turkey was like anywhere from 40 to 100%. Turkey is fucked because of Erdogan. The only reason that the Turkish economy persists is because of is because of its exceptional hair transplant services. In the case of the United States, the reason why Donald Trump seizing control of the Federal Reserve would end so poorly is not just because of him having a dick rider in the central bank, but it's also because of his disastrous economic and tariff policy. Jerome Too Slow Powell, does not want to lower interest rates because of Trump's tariffs. He doesn't want to lower interest rates because that, in conjunction with Trump's tariffs, would skyrocket the cost of goods by way of weakening the U.S. dollar. When the dollar becomes weaker, companies are unable to import as many goods as previously. Therefore, they increase prices because there is less demand. There is less of a certain product or good, and they want to make as much money as possible off of that product or good. That is why Jerome Powell does not want to lower interest rates. It doesn't have as much to do with mortgage rates, for example. However, you still get fucked over in that instance as well. If mortgage rates are at 7% and they cut it to 3.5%, that halves a mortgage payment, which means that you have more people who are able to enter the housing market. Now, in that instance, I don't give a fuck, right? I think that people should be able to buy houses. But the issue with the housing crisis isn't necessarily the interest rates. It's the cost of the homes tangent. As someone who bought a house last year, people would tell me that the interest rate isn't that bad, even though, mine's sub 6%, which is good, all things considered. They're like, oh, well, when I bought my house in 1981, the interest rate was 16%. And I'm like, okay, Unc. That was like 25 grand. The prices of the home was significantly cheaper. It wasn't like 39 times the median salary. The homes were much more affordable. Anyway, if Donald Trump seizes control of the Federal Reserve and cuts interest rates, we are going to have a depression that is beyond the Great Depression. It would be absolutely atrocious, all because of the fact that we are an import-based economy, and the prices of those imports would skyrocket by way of high tariffs and low interest rate.
Well, I think this sets an incredibly dangerous precedent. We've seen Trump over the last just few months use this pretense of mortgage fraud to go after people who have very clearly been political antagonists of his. To expand that to an institution like the Fed, which has enormous influence over, control over how the U.S. economy functions, is dangerous. It sets a dangerous precedent. We want the Fed to be independent from political influence, as the reporter was just saying. A president who can make political decisions over fiscal policy is not necessarily going to make the best long-term economic decision. They're going to make whatever they think the best short-term political decision is for them. And that's not a successful way to run an economy. So I think there's enormously dangerous precedent here. I think there will be significant political pushback from Democrats, but also I expect from independents, from moderate Republicans who say this isn't the way that we want to run this country.
If you think that there's going to be any more than 3 Republicans who push back against this, you're fucking naive. The Republicans are so cucked to Donald Trump, they would sell their children to him, I think. They would allow their children to go to the Trump coal mine if he created that. The only Republicans that are going to speak out against this are going to be fucking Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. That's it. That's the extent of Republican pushback. In fact, I'm sure there are some Republicans who are going to try to claim that Lisa Cook was in the Epstein files. The party is fucking cooked.
I do think it is something that should be concerning, the idea that the president would have such influence over the federal board. But the reality is that I'm not surprised that Donald Trump is taking this step. I remember what happened during the Biden administration, and many of us were watching what the Letitia James and that just exorbitant amount of the fine that Donald Trump had with the fraud case. So it's, for all of the people who are complaining about the fact that, oh, wow. And in your reporting actually points out that she did take 2 mortgages. I'm not one who thinks that the president should really be getting involved at this level. He's been going at Jerome Powell and the board over and over again. And I imagine for Donald Trump, this is just another effort at that. But do I like the fact that a president of the United States is trying to exert so much influence over the federal board? No, I don't. Am I surprised that Donald Trump is doing this? No, I'm not.
Well, and as our experts say, this will likely end up.
That was a Republican strategist who I think is going to be unemployed after that for fucking speaking out against the god that is Donald Trump. Am I also surprised by what Trump is doing? No. If you're surprised by anything that Donald Trump has done thus far, or like him trying to do all this fascist shit, when you see him doing dictator stuff and you're like, Donald Trump wants to be a dictator? Since when? I know that you have not been paying attention, unfortunately.